We're going live.
No! We are live. I think that's our best intro ever.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, fine. Okay. If anybody sees this after, they're gonna be like,
I mean, we can do a show while they're waiting.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I'm
hit
going
myself.
Okay, we go live. Where's the video? Where's the link?
That's my words.
Let's share this.
No. Don't watch it again.
There we are. Live now. Oh, we got people watching already.
Whoa.
Kate is here and Shashti is here and Estefanía is here.
I'm here. Let's try again. What we do?
Yeah. The ball or the sharing?
I did it. I know how to share. Like, it's done.
Hold on. Not everybody's that fast.
It's the process. Take your time.
Yeah, so if you caught our fantastic intro, that was Estefanía trying to throw a ball.
And we try again.
Yeah, do it one.
Wait.
Wait.
Ready?
You're ready?
Yep.
And a 1, 2, 3. Shoot.
Oh.
I lost the ball. Where's the ball?
Yeah, let's wait. We started 2 minutes so people can find the link now.
Wait. I have an idea.
Yeah.
I can throw this ball too. Sorry, no.
Huh?
It's freeze? Why?
Nothing is freezed.
It's freeze for me. No, it's working. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, people are finding the link. Lovely.
Good.
Lovely. Even though it's super hot in Norway, people are still watching.
Yeah.
I thought most people would be like dead.
That's like saying they'd be watching outside and it's too hot to go outside.
Yes. It's too hot.
Man.
Everybody's just shrimps or something in Norway, I think.
Wait.
No.
Okay. Close. Okay.
Yeah? Should we start?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
So the topic today is, what does it mean to be a tap dance teacher?
Yeah, why did we pick that topic?
I think it was my fault.
Well, we talked about the last time about responsibilities.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's where we left off the thread, for those who joined last time. And there was also some questions that we figured let's do a session on this, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
That was.
You always dodge.
Where do we start?
Well, I think the starting point of like responsibility is a good place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? As a teacher, you're stuck. You're put in front of people right away.
Yeah.
Right? And most of those people that you're in front of either don't have like prior experience, or we can assume that they don't have the experience that you do as a teacher with the craft, with whatever they're trying to learn. And so you're in a position where like you're responsible for whatever that person is going to think of the craft. right? Whether at every little level, like I was thinking about this last night. I was like, what do teachers actually teach? Right? In tap dance land, what are we supposed to be sharing, or what's all the stuff that we are actually in charge of, whether we realize it or not? And I think the easy stuff is like, okay, here's a step. I'm going to show you a step. Right? I'm going to show you a bunch of movements, and you're going to copy those movements. And that's like one level of teaching or sharing or showing. And then there's the language. There's like this step, like the stuff that makes this step up are called these things. And that varies, right? We know this is a challenge in tap dance land. Like you go to different places in the world and steps have different names. And you're like, and it's horrible. And everybody gets confused and everybody argues about it. And then you have to go back and be like, what is it that you're actually doing? Like, let me just see you do the thing, and then I can do that.
Now I'm curious now. Do you have a specific step in mind that you kind of find different names on everywhere?
Oh man, so
it's always something repeating, right?
Oh yeah, the slurp third riff thing, like no, nobody has it one way. Like, and I've started in classes, like I'll do it, and I'm like, whatever you call that thing, we're just gonna do that. Yeah, we're just gonna do that, because Jimmy Slide called it a riff. When I was growing up, it was a slurp. I've heard some people call it a third. I'm like, that's a different one, because it's got 3 sounds, so it's a third. And yeah, that one I think has the most like variance that I've experienced.
I heard some people call it flare too.
Which one?
Flare. I heard some people call it too.
Ooh. It's like very, very different. The one that I fight about is the paradiddle paddle and roll battle. Because paradiddle lives in drumming land and like is defined as a very particular thing. And lots of people, at least in the US, use that term for the paddle and roll. And I've even heard it where some people said, well, if you start on the dig, on the edge of the heel, then it's a paradiddle. If you start on the heel drop, then it's a paddle and roll. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Please don't do that.
That's weird.
But that happens, right? It's like people trying to make sense of a vocabulary that isn't clearly defined will start to like move things around. So just to be clear, since we brought up the terminology, paradiddle is an actual sticking pattern in percussion. So if you go right, left, right, or left, right, left, left, that's a paradiddle. The only similarity between that and a paddle and roll is that it has 4 sounds. Like, that's the only similarity. It might sound similarly because it's a 4 sound pattern that repeats, but other than that, there's nothing. Yeah, there's no similarity. There's no like, I don't know why. I don't know when those things crisscrossed or why it happened, but it happened, and we try and walk it back. So there's the movement, there's the language, there's like there's anything else with regards to knowledge, there's like the musical context, there's the historical facts, there's kind of whatever it is that we've gathered. Musical knowledge being like, okay, this is how you count the step, and this is how notes work, and this is, you know, this is how we can listen to this music to figure out how this step works with this piece of music that we're dancing to. Like, just basic yeah, Courtney saying the logical implication that there's two secret names for paddle and roll starting on the step in the brush. Yeah, man, the logical implication is insanity, is what that is. Like, I think in one of the other talks we talked about like this idea that if you name something, you can claim it.
Yeah.
Did we talked about that, right?
Yeah, we did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's hilarious to see the complicating of language for the sake of like looking like you have more information than you do. Like imagine if there's a website out there. I don't know if it still exists. It existed many years ago, and it was like it advertised itself as the place that had the most tap dance steps ever.
Yeah, it was this with a dictionary, right?
I don't know if it was the dictionary. I just remember like going on there and there was like literally name after name
Yes,
of all these steps.
I remember this one.
And I'm
but-
looking at it. This is a long time ago, but not that long time ago. It's like maybe
No.
15 years, right? So before YouTube, but the guy had videos online. You could have videos online. And I just remember looking, like I clicked on a few of them, and the thought came to my mind that I was like, this cat is just making up names for any step that he makes up and posting it as like, this is a new tap dance step. And if you know if you've experienced tap dancing from an improvisational standpoint, from like the way I grew up learning from Savion is Savion would walk into the class and he would improvise a step, and that'd be the step of the day. And we would just learn that step, and then it would go away. It would, whoever kept it, whoever forgot it, forgot it. And oftentimes if I would go back to him later, he wouldn't remember what the step was, right? Because it was just for that particular moment. And so when I was coming up, that's how I figured you were supposed to teach, because he was my guy and that's how he taught. So when I started teaching at Broadway Dance Center, that's what I started to do. I was like, all right, it's today. What are we going to do today? And I would improvise a step and we would make the step up. And I've had the experience where students would come back to me and be like, I really like this step that you did. And they would show it to me. And I'm like, that looks like a really nice step, but I don't remember doing that. And I think to myself, like, imagine if I named every step that I ever made and put that somewhere and sold that.
And with a dictionary of tap.
Oh my gosh, that would be insanity. Because there's no way, like it's codification that's not helpful. Right? It's saying that things are things and like calcified and actual things that aren't really actual things. Like, you don't know if something is going to last unless it actually lasts. Right? And so steps that are really, really powerful or have a certain thing about them, you don't know if they have a certain thing unless you throw it on a bunch of people and people take it, and then 5 years later they come back and they're like, that step was a thing. You're like, okay, cool, that step was a thing.
That happened here with Josh, for example.
Really? What was that like?
Like he came here. I was not in the STAP community when he came first, and
Okay.
he taught the Capella Josh.
Yep.
He forgot about this thing, but Barcelona kept it. And when he came back, and then all Barcelona people were like, "You remember the thing? We remember." And like, "That's mine." It was like, yeah. That's the story of the Capella Josh. It's impressive.
Yeah. That's. I mean, that's the thing. There's Leon Collins. There's a documentary called "Songs Unwritten" about him. Leon Collins was Diane Walker's teacher, tap dancer from Boston. He said in the documentary something to the extent of, if I have a step, I feel like I need to give that step away, especially to students, because I create steps all the time. And so if there's somebody there in the room, he used to teach it. He taught for a little bit, at least, at Harvard University. And so he was talking about this idea that, like, no, if I make something up, I want to give it to somebody so that they can have it. And so they can learn from it, because what I do is I make stuff. And where they are in their process is learning stuff. So they need to learn from the stuff that I make. Otherwise, the stuff that I make is going to go away. So it's an interesting, it's an interesting kind of idea that steps should be like vehicles for learning, right? And not always not always just stuff for performance or stuff that we keep for like just creative exercises. Okay, here we go. Sareta just asked a question. This is a good one. What's the most important thing a tap dancer should teach or share? So we have, go.
No, you go.
No.
I mean, there's many answers to this question. It can be
Yes.
as simple as separate the heel and the toe. The difference between a toe and a heel. Easy. It has many levels, this question.
Yeah.
I
think-
you go.
No.
Really, you go.
Okay, I'll go. So I think the thing that I've enjoyed sharing the most is somebody's encounter with themselves. So having a space where you get to see someone attempt to get their feet or their legs to do a thing, and they can't, like, it's just not working, and they have to encounter their own inability to control their body in a way that, like, mandates a particular outcome, and they get frustrated, and they get, like, all the things of their personality, whatever it is, like, come up, and you're like, okay, great, welcome to the human experience, here we go, here's where, like, the thing gets fun, right? Because now you have to figure out how to talk to your feet, and you have to figure out, like, what you can do in your body to get your feet to do the thing that you want. And I think this happens at every level. It's not that it doesn't happen with beginners, or it's not that it doesn't happen once you think you know what you're doing. It's a continual encounter. And I think if we skip over that, we miss out on like a beautiful part of what tap dancing can do for someone who's in the process of learning. What were you gonna say?
I forgot.
Oh.
Wait, I'll read again. I think there's not like one thing that is important. Like she's asking why, like the most important. I think maybe the important way to share the things for me is the thing that it's important. How you share them. It's coming from love or passion of the things you feel for the dance. I think is the vehicle to make them learn. Then inside of the way, you can teach like many things, but I will not put like movement, like mechanics or style or music. I will not say one of them is important. I think it's the way that you share the things that is important.
I was thinking like you, Estefanía, like if you have the passion for it, then you will automatically like if you have the passion for tap dance and you want to teach, you will go and research all the things that you need to share with your students. If you don't have the passion or the love for it, you're not interested in researching these things. So I think that's kind of like what drives you to find the things that you need to share with the students, and automatically it will be about the music, it will be about the history, it will be about certain steps, certain phrases, the whole package instead of just one thing.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing for teachers to remember that they're not done learning. Right? Like we often think that once we're in front of the room, we have, and there might be there's time pressure, like people are working now, like all the things, but I was actually really impressed with a teacher in New York, very, very well known, in particular circles, who told me once that, they invest at least 1 week of the year. So out of 51 weeks, or out of 52 weeks, 1 week, for their own development. So they will go and they will take a course, or they will spend some time in the library, like for at least 40 hours over the course of the week, over the course of the year, like a full work week. And so they actually came and took my summer intensive as one of their things. And I was like, wait, you want to come and learn from me? Like, you've been teaching for 40 years. I'm a newbie, relatively speaking. And she's like, no. This is good. Like, I have this practice of continuing to develop my own learning. So I'm happy to do that with you, because for whatever reason, they were attracted to the process that I was sharing. So I think that's super important, and it's okay. I think it's really okay for teachers to say that they don't know something, right? And then to go and find the answer, or find a person who has the answer and introduce that person to their kids.
Absolutely.
Or their students. There's something that came to my mind when we were with the question of like what's most important. That I don't know how many teachers think about this. I know some definitely do, but some might not. So better to say it than to assume. The culture of the room that you teach in as a teacher, you're responsible for. Right? The environment that is created when everybody walks in the door and the door closes behind them can be like a little microcosm of the world that you would like to live in. And you get to decide what that world is. Right? For the hour or hour and a half or 5 hours, maybe you lock the kids in there and it's like, no, we're not leaving. Right? 10 hours, whatever that is, you get to decide. And I think that practice for me, kind of the building of a room that is that has particular assumptions in the way that people relate to one another, has been the most important part, I think, of my development as a teacher. It's like, what do I want this room to be like?
I mean, at the end of the day, when you teach a class and, okay, you call it a quit, the class is over, you want the students to leave with a sensation of happiness, of love for the arts, and of accomplishing something, right? That's your goal. No matter what the content of the class is, you want them to leave with this sensation that they're doing something they love and they're actually managing something new, and this whole process that includes in being a student, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that sounds like someone who cares for the journey of the student, right? As opposed to someone who walks in the room and says, all right, I'm going to show you this stuff. I know this stuff is right. Like, I'm sharing the correct information. So there's nothing, there's no like, I'm not lying. This is not false. Like, the information is right. Get what you can. And I'll see you later. Right? That to me is, that kind of experience is different than teaching. Right? Teaching or educating has to do with like literally drawing something out of the student. And so you're continually searching for what's already inside them and using this exchange of content or information, like, hey, try a flat. One student might get it like first time and you're like, okay, I don't have to draw that out of you. That's already there. And, two people over from that student, there might be someone who struggles like immensely trying to understand what a flap actually is before their body is even willing to try. And so then your job is to, get the lifeline and dive in and say like, okay, I'm going to come and find you and draw that flap out until it happens on the floor and in your body in a way that you believe that it was always there and that you own it. And I mean, that stuff takes time. Like, it takes a lot of time. I think we think that this stuff should happen quickly, or it's like, we got an hour class, go. You're like, wait. Like, can we get a little longer? And then yeah, it's just a thing. Ooh, new question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the historic background should be shared with students from the beginning or not until a certain point? Eh. I think people can be shared from the beginning. I taught a class just a couple of weeks ago for Tap Dance Day, and it was multi-level class, all ages, but I knew that there were going to be kids there, and kids like 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And so I made sure that I got the clip of Bill Robinson's stair dance ready, and before we did anything, I was going to show them Mr. Bill, because the day was Mr. Bill's birthday. And with Zoom classes, like, you can see all the people's faces. So I share the video and I watch the people's faces, and I think one of the most inspiring things for me is to see like a 6-year-old go while they're watching a clip. And then afterwards, it's like, this is Mr. Bill's birthday, and what did you think about Mr. Bill? Like, do you think he's a good tap dancer? And they're like, yeah, like, he's really good. And so I don't think there's a limit on the side of like a learner as to when the context can be introduced. The fact that there are dancers that we look to and that we continue to learn from, that we at least have documentation of for the past 100 years, right? Like actual video documentation of. The basics in tap dance land are, the originators of those basics are lost to time. Like, we don't know who the first person was to shuffle. We don't know who the first person was to flap. And so as a teacher, I think we're in this place where you have like the communal basic vocabulary, again, that the terms are variant in. So that's a little messy. And then you have these people, and we talked in the first chat that we talked about. It was like, everything in tap dance land is about people. There's nothing that isn't about people. So you can start to introduce people to your students, and hopefully integrate whatever it is that whatever it is that you think of in your dancing when you think about those people in whatever you're teaching. And in that way, it becomes like a full embodied experience. So it's not like, all right, we're going to look at this clip and then we're going to do something completely different. Because then you're like, okay, well, why do I need to know about that person? But if you look at that person and then you go to the floor and you say, okay, well, we're gonna do something that is rhythmically similar, or we're gonna use a mechanic that we saw in that clip, or we're gonna make a step that moves in a similar way across the floor or around the floor that we saw this dancer use. Because I think the thing that we miss if we don't do that is the possibility of an integrated practice, right? This thing where like everything happens at the same time. We hear a thing, we listen to music, we make a move, we think about a person, we count numbers. Like, it's all there in the same mess. And yeah, I think that's like that's one of the things that tap dancing is really good at, like giving us that experience.
I'll add about the same question we're in. I will use the sentence like, don't confuse people. Then if you think you need to share historical facts or something like this and they're not ready to listen to this thing, or they're not connecting with nothing that is in the room, you will forget. Once you're inside of a thing, you can connect with something that is not in the room, but is related, like historical, musical, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, same thing, like make the connection, but not because you know the facts, start like telling them like, you should know that. They were like, I would forget. Then somebody told me like recently, little nuggets. Like turn on the curiosity of the student, you drop something, and then maybe like, oh, that's interesting. Can you say more? Can you explain me more of this thing? And it works for all the levels.
I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking about actually reading the people in the room. Because sometimes you have a group that is very perceptual for these things. Like you can see that they want to know everything and give it to me now, kind of. And then you can have a talk like for an hour about these things. And other times you can see that, you say one name and you can say 20 times, 20 classes, and still after 20 classes, they don't remember the name. So it's all about the group that you're having too, and learning to read the people that you have in your class, which comes from experience.
Yeah, and I think to add, there's like teachers are like we scatter seeds, right? Like we throw out information and we see where it sticks. And if you're teaching in one place and you have a number of groups of students that you teach, or if you travel around to teach, it's a similar context where you don't know which student is going to be the one that grabs on. Right? And so we have a responsibility to make sure that the information is correct, that we're sharing in a way that is caring of the people who are in the room. And I think that creates a healthy culture for in that room. Because that's also seed planting, right? It's like if people have not experienced a room that's encouraging, or that is where people relate to one another in a way that's like, oh yeah, that was really good, do more. You're like, or I need help, can you help me? Like, people can grab onto that and they'll be like, I want more of that. Where's that kind of room? But yeah, you never really know. But if you find that person, then that person will start to come back to you because they trust that what you're giving is correct. Because you're the first person that planted a seed in them.
A good tip maybe for those who like, okay, I want to teach but haven't been doing this so much or stuff like this, is like most of the people who wants to teach, they've been to tap festivals, and there you can take classes with so many. And when you do this, you will really quickly figure out what you like. Like, oh, I like the way this guy is teaching. I didn't like that class that much, right? It doesn't have anything to do with the tap dancer in itself. The tap dance can be amazing, but it's just something with the teaching that makes you go, oh, this was good for me. And try to analyze those situations to figure out, why was it good? Why did it stand out? Because if it works for you, then for sure it works for more people. Like if you really felt that this was a good class in the way that it was taught, then that's going to work from you too. If you manage to just figure out the clues of why was it good. So you can do that every time you're taking a class, like analyze it a bit and say to yourself, what was good about this class?
Yeah, and
Make-
every teacher has a different method.
Mm.
Right? Every teacher has a different method. I mean, and that's that's part of the craft, man. Like there's no standardized way of going through it. I think people have attempted to kind of standardize it, but yeah, it's your room,
Mm.
right? Once you walk in there and you close the door and you've got the kids, then like, yeah, it's your room. You own that, for better or for worse. Like,
Yeah.
that's the thing. There are tons of questions coming in.
Yeah.
Yes. Next one.
Do you think the how you teach can make up for shortcomings one teacher can have? What shortcomings?
I think like when you pick a teacher, you find a teacher that is good at teaching his or her way, and you shouldn't expect that that teacher would teach like Sam Weber, for instance, because if you want to learn Sam Weber's technique, you go to Sam Weber. This kind of thought, like every teacher is different.
Yeah, but I think there's something really important to say here about perceived shortcomings and how to facilitate like teaching around them or with that in mind. Okay, so say you you're a teacher, you're starting to teach pickups or pullbacks, whatever you call them, and you don't have a method yet of how to do that, right? One of two things happens. Either you go into the room and you start trying things with your students and you see what works and what doesn't, or you go to someone and you get advice or some learning about different ways to teach a pullback for different age levels and different physical abilities and that whole thing. But if someone comes to you and asks you to teach them a particular thing that you don't know, there's like three options maybe. One is you say, "Sure, I'll teach you," and you try. And that is not a good thing. Like, don't do that. Right? The other is you say that you don't know how to do that, but you will connect them with someone who does. Or you say you don't know how to do that, but you're going to go and find out and then come back to them with information. Right? I think the connecting with someone who does is the thing that most teachers are afraid of because they think they'll lose their students. Right? And I don't think that should be a fear. The going and getting information and then bringing back is like the baseline, I think, of what should happen. Right? Don't teach what you know. Teach what you're sure of. Hit the limit of your knowledge and ability, and then either work to extend that, like work to become a more knowledgeable, a more experienced teacher, or get really, really comfortable teaching the stuff that you know really, really well, and then you will be a solid part of a particular kind of student's journey. Like they will always come through you, and they will always graduate from you and go on to their next, like the next thing. But you know, it's kind of like this idea that in order for tap dancing to thrive, we need a lot of teachers teaching the basics really well. Right? Otherwise, when people come to festivals or when they want to get better, there's a bunch of stuff that we have to go like, wait, you learned what? How'd you learn? Wait, no, don't do that. Do this. Like, there's unlearning, and there's things in your body that you then have to like shift and move and switch. And you're like, eh. Bubba Gaines taught two people. He had two kind of prodigies. One was Deborah Mitchell. The other was Betty Morrow. Betty Morrow's Deborah Mitchell runs the New Jersey Tap Ensemble. Betty Morrow is a little lesser known. She used to teach at Broadway Dance Center. She passed away a number of years ago. But she told me once, she said the reason Bubba Gaines taught her and was okay with teaching her is that he told her, I can teach you because you didn't learn anything wrong. Because it takes a lot of time for somebody to unlearn, like teach somebody to unlearn something so that they learn something else. And so it's really important that whatever you give as a baseline is correct, or at least functional, right? Otherwise, there's a lot of work that has to happen later. Next one. How do you? I don't know. You that's you.
Hey! Like, there's a lot of people asking me this thing lately.
What do you tell them?
It's like how you teach creativity is like, there's a way for that? No. I think like you need to go to, like, if you talk only about creativity, you need to be in the room and just try things. And you will figure out what you like about what is going on there and then put it together. But there's not a way to teach that. But when you have students, I mean, there's like many tools where you can work on that. I don't want to say them. Like, I think, what? Okay. Like there is, okay, how you do this thing? Like improvisation is the first thing to do this thing. For example, like music, there's so many tools to work on that. Music, improvisation, push them to create too. Like, oh, hey, okay, you have 4 bars. Show me something. Not improv. Create it on the room. Or if you're too frustrated, go home and then bring it next day. Yoo-hoo. We had class this morning. And yeah, it was Mary saying yoo-hoo in the video. Sorry, I knew it. I think that maybe there's a frustration with creativity, and think that creativity is your voice. You don't need to be frustrated with your voice. You just to be like, okay, that's it. I love what I have. That's my voice. I think it's not enough to express myself. Okay, I will reach like more things to get it bigger.
Do you find people are scared of that?
Yeah, like people is asking, like people is asking me like, why are you asking me? Like, I'm not scared to try things, and maybe it's the thing why they're asking to me. Just trying things. But maybe I like this analogy, like not analogy, like the voice. Like you're learning the vocabulary to work on your voice. Then you can do this thing with beginners. They learn one step in the first class. Okay, let's play with it. Let's be creative only with one step, and you lose this fear from the beginning. At the same thing with improvisation, like people coming later, like 4 years of tap, like I'm scared about this thing. Okay, let's fix it from the beginning.
Well, and that goes back to, like, for me, creating a safe space, right? For someone to feel okay to share their voice, for them having, like, the voice is a really good analogy, because then you go back to, well, what words do you know? How do you string those words together? Like, you're gonna make some sentences that don't make sense. That's okay. Like, what's the context? What are the rules of grammar? Like, you give them all the possible structures, so that they have a framework. Otherwise tap dancing, like, there isn't a really good way to define creativity if there isn't a framework that you're working within, right? If there aren't limitations, then there's no way to be quote unquote creative.
I think it's a good example, Andrew, here.
How the students make up a break, it gives them a chance to be creative. Yeah, totally. You give them the 3, and then they come up with the last one. Yeah, I think that's definitely a good way.
I feel like there's many tools, like, but different exercises. Like I can do a list, but I don't know here. Yeah.
Why did you decide to become a tap teacher? Oh man.
I think you decide that? No.
I never decided.
I didn't decide like I want to be a tap teacher. I think I didn't say it like. You go.
You decided. Okay, then it's your question.
I didn't want to. Honest to goodness, I did not want to. I was 17. I was like, somebody offered me an opportunity to teach. It was a local dance studio. I can't remember how they found me, and I was like, no, I'm not ready. I don't know how to do this, like all the things. And I had a conversation with my parents, and they're like, this is a very bizarre. It was a very bizarre conversation, but it worked for me. They said, do you think that the disciples of Jesus Christ were ready when he sent them out? And I was like, no, definitely not. They weren't ready. And they were like, do you think that you have more knowledge than the people that you're going to be teaching? And I said, sure, I think so. You know, I was 17, and I mean, the weird thing was I was 17 or 18, and the kids I would be teaching were like 15 and 16. So I'd be teaching teenagers. But I said, yeah, no, I think I have at least more experience, maybe not more knowledge, but like I have stuff that I can share. And then my parents said, you have a responsibility to share what you know. And I said, oh, like I have to teach? you're telling me that I have to teach, not that I just should. Like, I have to. There's a responsibility that you have to the knowledge that you've been exposed to, or that you've been given, or that you've been entrusted with, to share that in a way that is honoring of that information. And so I had to say yes. Like, I took the gig. And it was great. The kids were great. We had a blast. Like, it was a lot of fun, actually, to share in the learning process, and to learn how to share the experiences that I was exposed to with people who had, like, no context, right? They had no framework for somebody walking into the room and going, I think we're going to do this today. They're like, wait, what? Right? Because the general context is, you come in with a prepared lesson plan, and you come in, and you should do that. Like, don't not do that. Prepare what you're going to share. But also know that you can come in and not have an idea, and allow the students to see that idea come to life, and let them be exposed to that process in the room. Because then they're like, oh, like, it's not always pre-thought out, and it's not, because no, not a lot is pre-thought out. Actually, there's a lot more that happens in life in general that's like, I think I need to go this way, or I think I need to go this way, and those choices happen, and it's not always, like, predetermined, at least in one's own mind, I think.
Or if you forget what you prepared.
Bingo. And what are you gonna do then, right?
Exactly. You cannot stand there and like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to teach today, right? You have to teach.
Yeah, man. You know, you go, and it works on a gig too. You go to a gig, and you ask the band for a song, the song that you've prepared and that you've practiced, and you want to perform, and they're like, sorry dude, we don't know that song. And you're like, wait, what? Like, I spent 5 weeks preparing this solo. You're gonna tell me that you don't know it? Or they try to play it and it just doesn't sit right. Like, oh, okay, so what do? Do you hit your head up against the wall and you try and make it work? Or do you say, well, what song do you guys like to play, and let's see if we go that way? We don't know. Well, this is a good question. Do you think there's a right time for a tap dancer to start teaching?
I think it's the right time for somebody who gives you the chance because they believe in you. Like you told the story about your parents. Kind of giving you this nudge that, okay, you're ready. Try it. I don't think you can calculate exactly what time is right, because it varies from person to person. But if somebody gives you the chance, that means that they see something in you. That means that they believe in you and think you can become a good teacher.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a tension, or can be a tension, between someone who, the person who's hiring, right? Whoever that person is, if the framework that they use to find the individual to fill a slot is not always based on finding the best possible teacher, right? So I think there is a balance, which is kind of what I went through with my first gig. Was like, I don't think I'm ready. Why do you think I'm ready? Right? And I think that's a good question to work through. Right? Yes, if somebody thinks you're ready, cool. if you don't think you're ready, maybe you have a couple old trusted friends that you can have that conversation with, and if they say, no, you're definitely ready, like go in, then you go in. I think there's often, and you'll know when you're ready. Like if you go into the room and there's learning, right? You're a new teacher, there's learning, but yeah, you want to go in at a time where at least you know that there's something that you can teach. Like you know the basics. Great. Go teach the basics. You know something a little bit more than the basics. Great. Go teach that. Right? And there's an old line that cats used to say, and I've heard it said more recently as well. It says, stay in your lane. Right? You know what you know, you do that. You don't have to do what everybody else is doing. Just do the stuff that you know. Right? And there's going to be pressure, and it's going to feel like, well, if I don't do that, then nobody's going to want to come to my class. It's fine. Do what you know. Right? And I think that's really, really important, because eventually people will come to know that you know the thing that you know, and you're not trying to do something else, and that will have value, and people will recognize that, and they will come to you for that stuff.
How you started?
Teaching?
Yeah.
Do I remember that far back? Well, literally by somebody giving me a chance. I was teaching like kids classes, like jazz ballet, these kind of things, or like what do you call it in English? Like dance classes for kids. Yeah.
Sure.
But I love tap dancing, and it just happened. I think the first time I taught for the tickle toes, Shashti asked me if I wanted to have like a summer course. So I think that was like the first time, like more official teaching lesson. And I mean, looking back, I laughed my ass off, because I mean, as a teacher, you evolve. Thank God, you learn how to teach, and you become a better teacher. You're never perfect the first time you teach at all. You might know how to talk to people. You might know like pedagogic tricks, these kind of things, but it's such a learning curve. So you just kind of have to jump out and make sure that you correct the things that doesn't work, because you notice very fast if something doesn't work. So it's quite a steep learning curve, because you have maybe 20 students in the room, right? And something isn't working, and you're like, oh, what to do now? You don't have the experience, right? But if somebody, like for me, it was that, somebody believed in me, I got the chance to try, and then I figured, okay, I love this. I want to be good at this. And how to become good at this? Take other people's classes. Not just one, like many people, because then you see different types of techniques of teaching this, or how they approach the students, all these kind of things. And it doesn't even have to be tap dance. I've learned so many things taking house lessons, or ballet lessons, or different types of dance, just to see how they teach. So yeah, it wasn't a choice. I was just dancing. I wanted to dance. And then somebody gave me a chance to teach. Okay. Great.
There are lots of interesting questions happening in the chat. What's the next one?
Next one.
Are there questions you started to ask before taking a teaching gig to make sure it's a healthy environment for all those ideas? Oh.
Teaching gig like means like festival, like outside of your room? No.
Yeah, I think it's like, so oftentimes in the States, you can go into a studio as a guest artist. It's not a festival. You
All right.
go. Or I don't know if Courtney's asking about like going into a studio with as a seasonal teacher, but you know, you're the new teacher for that season. I think from the environment here in the US, if you ask whether or not a particular environment is focused on competitions or that kind of pursuit, that will give you a pretty big frame in terms of the possible atmosphere in the room. But other than that, there aren't really questions that I've come to ask that kind of help me, and maybe that's probably a good thing to develop. But I'll ask whoever's hiring me what they want me to teach. Like I'll ask to see if they've thought about why they want me, like me as an individual, to be in that room with those kids. And then I'll try and get a sense of, all right, well, how long have those students been dancing, and kind of what kind of thing have you been working on with them? Like what has been their most recent pursuit in the craft? And then I just try and go from there. I mean, if you're going in for a guest spot, like your complete impact on those students is a total of 90 minutes, possibly. Right? That's all you have with them. So whatever you can do in 90 minutes is what you do. And you try and create a room in 90 minutes. And if the room isn't respective, or if it doesn't respect your voice, then you have to get people to shut up and pay attention. And that's a thing. And that happens. If it is, then the room goes in whatever direction that it can go in those 90 minutes, right? Because you're coming in and everybody's ready already. But as you go, and I think the more you can make a case for yourself in terms of what it is that you teach and how it is that you teach publicly, the more that's like your call, that's like your voice as a teacher, the more people are going to come to you who are attracted to that thing. And then you won't have to field out or kind of filter through all the clients. You will be attracting the people who want to have the thing that you're sharing. That's more of a business thing, but I think it functions. Have you ever, or do you still keep a notebook, video book of your choreos or exercises? Ha! You do? Do you?
I have a. It's not here. Well, that could work. Maybe.
Whoa!
That's an example.
Oh my gosh!
I do that for every semester, but then they disappear somehow. I should find a book to put them in.
I have them.
You stole them? So
okay.
So
not all of them. Not all of them.
Yeah, I think it depends. Sometimes you want to save something and you keep it, but other times it's just what to say. But the exercises, I mean, after teaching for a while, you have a set of exercises that you always give kind of your students, and you don't have to document them because they're so in the system that, okay, now I'm going to teach a group that has been tap dancing for 2 years. You will do this and this and this exercise. You know this by heart. So all of these exercises I never have unless it's like something creative, because I'm sorry, I started like really not remembering my creative ideas. So I have to document them. I can't, it's too many.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, I teach, sometimes I have like kids classes and I have choreographies with everybody for a show, and it's 8 classes next to my tap classes. I cannot remember. So I have to film myself or write them down or whatever. So I think everybody has their own type of method to remember all these things. Some people are very organized, have books, have libraries on the computer with this is all my choreographies through the years, these kind of things. And other people just need to document, not to forget.
Yeah,
Kind of in the middle.
I've never written anything down.
Never ever?
Never ever.
Oh.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's really bad because like I know there are things that I've done that I don't remember. And I know they were probably good or helpful, and I just don't remember them. So
at festivals, I write down things that I mean, I have notes on my phone from like Stockholm 8 years ago. If I look at them now, I have no clue what I've written there. It says a lot of sounds, and it says the name of the teacher, and it says this and this exercise, and it's like, what? So
yeah, I don't know. I think the way that I've begun, or the way that I tend to remember things, is if I share them with someone, then I'll remember. It's like, because I remember the moment that I shared the thing with the person, and that reminds me of the content. I don't remember I don't remember anything else. So I've started, like, if I go to a festival, maybe 2 years ago I started doing this because everybody wants to videotape like whatever we did in class. I'm like, fine, you can videotape, I want a copy. Like, send me a copy, because everybody has all these videos and I don't see them. So it's like, and I forget them. So I'm like, at least let me know what I've done, because that would be nice.
But I'm sometimes using this, like, even you're not getting the theme right now, I will teach it. Just record it or something, then we will go through again. But I need to put it out to remember for me.
Yeah.
Like, it's a thing.
And for them to sleep on it a bit, because if they come back the next day also and have watched the video, they're like, oh, now I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh!
Of course.
Yeah!
Of course. But I think there's this goes back to the question of like how sure, like, what has your development been English, what how have you developed as a teacher, and who has been your guide and your teacher, so that as you teach, you have someone that can support and encourage and guide your teaching. At no point should we have a community. It's going to be a thing. At no point should we have a community in which you feel isolated and not able to go to someone for guidance in terms of how you are teaching. Because the teachers are the most responsible and like most powerful individual in the community, because you're the ones like sharing what it is that the craft work is with whoever's going to be the next people to come into the community. And if you're out there and you feel alone, find someone.
We did something here. I think the first time they did it is in Los Angeles, but the Barcelona Tap experience that we bring it here. We had every week a different student organizing a class.
Yep.
After the class, we sit down, like feedback time. We were talking. It was like other students, like nobody in a high position of teaching was inside of this thing. They were like just helping each other in the same level. But it was so cute. It's an option.
I think that's great if you have enough of a community around you, right? If you have enough other dancers. But I don't think it's always smart to cut out the older generation. You just need to find someone who doesn't take their position of power and impose it on you. Right? At every point in my my journey, I've always enjoyed being in situations where there were many generations. Right? Oftentimes, like 2 or 3 generations above me, and then maybe one under me. Right? And so you never feel like, yeah, there's variance. There should be a wide, not a wide road, but like if this is whatever somebody thinks pure tap dancing is like this really thin line, there's like a breadth of space around it that lots of people navigate and we go in and out of. I think the doubt comes from not having people that you can be in conversation with and say, listen, I gotta go teach an absolute beginner class. Like, how do I do this? What's the most important information that I need to give to these people who have never tap danced before in their life? Right? And you talk to 2 or 3 friends who maybe have had that experience, and it's not like there's no one answer, right? There are ideas that you then take and you go into the room and you test out with the people that are learning from you.
I never ask.
It's okay, but like, do you feel alone?
Now, no, but maybe in the process I felt alone for sure.
Yeah.
The things like it's because I'm questioning myself because I'm not checking. Like I'm questioning myself with myself.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah. Do you think everyone can work out ways to teach children, or some may be just not designed for that?
I think there's people born more naturally to communicate with children.
I'm not.
Some people, for them, is just natural, and for some people, it's not. Of course, I believe that everybody can learn anything they want if they set their mind to it. But for some people, it comes more natural. It's like for some people, they manage to do a pullback on the first lesson, and other people, they use 5 years, right? Some things come natural and some things is forced, but it doesn't mean that when you get it, you're worse. It just means that the road getting there, it is harder. And I think children are like that.
You just called children a hard road. Or possibly a hard road.
For me, teaching children is the easiest.
Oh, wow. I will send them to Norway.
But I've been teaching children since I was 15.
Yeah.
And for some reason, I mean, I never thought to say this, but kids love me. So it comes very easy to me because they trust me. And I know that this is not for everybody. Like a lot of children are skeptical to some people, and if they are, then it's hard to teach them something.
Yeah. No,
So
kids are very honest with who they trust and who they don't trust.
yes.
And so I think my experience with kids is it goes back to the culture that you're trying to create in the room. That's more important, I think, the younger the group is than the actual stuff that you're teaching. Like if you had to prioritize, I would say,
I mean, a kid is not there to learn a shuffle. That's not why they're there. It's a different approach than a grown-up.
Right. Yeah, well, a kid is there, like a kid doesn't know, right? They just know that they're there. So the stuff that you provide for them is like integral to their learning, right? They'll remember how they felt in that room more than they remember how, like, what they did. And so I still remember to this day, like, the way my first tap dance teacher was. And I started with him when I was 3.5 years old, and he's still around and we're still in touch. And that's a beautiful, like, it's a beautiful thing. And I know it's not common.
I still have my first ballet teacher, and I know she took a look the last time, and I was 3 years old. Still remember her.
Yeah. That's really cool. What do you think of this quote? You teach what you are and not what you know. This reflection is also, it's connected to mentoring for sure. I think as a teacher, we interpret the information that we have and we share that. And so the interpretation of everything you know about tap dance is going to come through who you are, like how you are, how you think, what your body likes to do compared to that of your teacher or the people that you've learned from. And so the easiest way to encapsulate that is to say that you're teaching who you are. Right? You're teaching from your personality, from your life's experience. And the vehicle that you're teaching, that you're using to teach, is tap dance. In cultural dances, the movement, the vocabulary, the music, like everything that's attached to anything in a cultural dance has meaning. And that meaning is normally attached to the identity of the people group from which that dance evolved, who used that dance. And it's tied to their identity. So if you're a teacher of a cultural dance, and I think tap dance can be viewed as that in a particular way, then you are going to be teaching from your identity, from your relationship with this craft. And in a sense, that's why, if you have a mentor, you are going to be you're not only going to be dancing like them for a time, you're going to be approaching the craft work like them. And you're going to understand what's important, like the prioritization of what's important and what's less important as a teacher will come from their perspective. I think the thing that you want to be aware of in that, if you take that on and you say, like, all right, I'm not just gonna lecture and kind of say this is a shuffle and this is a flap and that's all it is, and but you're gonna be kind of more personally exposed, then don't teach from your pain, teach from your joy. Because everybody in life has some pain, and if it's embodied and you have a dance that you use to like flesh that out, then that's going to be a part of who you are. And we don't want to teach pain. It's okay to know that pain exists, and it's okay to know that like historically around the world there are significant amounts of pain and suffering that happen on a continual basis. But if we're going to use tap dance for like the renewal of culture and the renewal of life, then when we teach it, we want to teach it so that it can reconcile individual pain, not add to it. Like, you're sad, great, dance. Not, if you dance, you have to be sad. Like, we don't want that one. But you're going to experience sadness, you're going to experience pain. When you do, this dance is going to be there for you. There are situations in which I've seen mentors like take the chip that's on their shoulder and be like, here, this is yours now. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, why create intergenerational trauma where there's no need for it? Right? There's enough pain and suffering in the world. If you have a dance that can clear it, use it to clear it, and then if the pain and suffering continues, then there's other work to be done. Like we know there's other work to be done. But I don't think there's need to teach an embodied experience of your own pain to your students. That feels reckless to me.
Mm.
There are many great dancers who would not start teaching because they know what they don't know or don't do it perfectly, so they don't feel like they can be an authority if they feel they're not. Don't try and claim that you're an authority. Let other people do that for you. Right? You're in the front of the room. There's no need for you to say that you're an authority. You're already in the front of the room. And if you don't think that you have the information to be in the front of the room, let somebody else tell you that you do. Right? Let somebody else check you. And it's okay to be checked. It's okay for somebody to say, no, you're not ready. Because then the question is, okay, what do I need to do to be ready? And they will tell you.
I will just show this. And
So
your tag, that's you, Andrew.
I record myself. Yeah, and that's a new practice for me, man. I haven't done that. That was not the norm. Like, I had friends. We would go to workshops, and then we would come back, and they would have their video camera, and they're like, "Okay, we'll videotape everything that we learn." I'm like, I for one am not going to watch that videotape. Like, I'm not the kind of person that's part of my practice. So I am the person that the thing that I remember, I will continually do, and it will become a part of me, and it like just cycles that way. So yeah. To what extent does your teaching influence your?
Hold on.
Do we want to?
I was reading
Amelia's follow up. Yeah.
Yeah, she's talking about this fear.
Yeah.
Like, when you're ready, you will like.
So here's the question: what will it take for those who doubt themselves to have the courage to do the thing anyway, right? Or to overcome the fear and overcome the doubt, knowing that there are, and maybe just testing. You can test. You don't have to go in and be like the teacher in your town forever. You can like have one workshop and see who shows up. Right? Check the waters before diving in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The self-questioning is a very good process when it comes to learning. Right? And going through the process of becoming aware and like understanding the way different things work. But I think self-questioning becomes challenging when you're actually like you're sitting on knowledge that other people don't have. And again, if you know what you don't know, you know what you know. And so you start with what you know. And you can share with your students. You can be really, really exposed with your students and you say, this is what I know. There's all this stuff that I don't know. And so we're going to start here. And you take your students on a journey. And that's, again, you don't have to teach. You don't teach from a place of, I don't know what I'm doing. You teach from a place of, I know what this is. And the dance will literally carry you into the places that you're not sure of because you're starting from what you know. If you start from what you don't know, especially when there are people there that are reliant upon you, right? Then it's the blind leading the blind, and we don't want that. We want people who can see leading people who haven't seen yet, so that they too can see. And if you see really clearly, you will also see what you can't see. Like you'll see where your sight's limit is. But if you can see 10 feet in front of you and the person next to you can only see 2, you've got 8 feet that you can lead them through before you're going to have to hand them off, or you're going to have to like figure out what the next step is. We would not have, so Henry Latang started in a studio in Harlem. I think, and you'll have to do some research on this, but I think the lady who ran that studio was named Mary Bruce. Check me on that. I'm not absolutely sure on the name, but her studio was in Harlem. She was very, very well known as a teacher. Henry Latang started there. At some point, she told Henry and Henry's folks that she can't teach Henry anything anymore. He would have to go to somebody else. And the person that they told Henry to go to was a guy named Buddy Bradley. And Buddy Bradley used to teach in Midtown. And the way Buddy taught Henry was like as an extra. So Buddy would be rehearsing or teaching a paying client in the next room, and Henry would be in the spare room, like in the back room. And Buddy would come in, he'd show Henry a step and say, work on it, and he'd leave. And then he'd come back and he would check Henry. And that was Henry's teaching process. And Buddy Bradley was kind of the, like Henry Latang for us is known as the choreographer of the older generation. Buddy Bradley was that guy in the generation before Henry. and we don't know a lot about him. We don't have a lot of documentation. Johnny Brandon was kind of the prodigy of Buddy Bradley in England, which is where Buddy went after being in New York. But he passed away a number of years ago. So like the connections that we have to him are not huge. But I share this story to say, if Mary had not told Henry to go to Buddy, we would not have Henry. Right? If you see that particular student that comes up and is like raring to go, like this is the one that's going to catch all the stuff, and you see it in them, there's going to be a time if you feel like you don't have the stuff that they need, that you have to tell them to go someplace else, or give them access to the information and say, okay, I want you to look at this and then we'll talk about it together. Or I want you to go buy this thing, like go learn Sam's work, get his DVD, and then I'll check you on it. Because in person is important and that encouragement is important, but you might not have the actual information to help. So maintaining the relationship but not being the source of information is possible, right? And can be of benefit to particular students. It's just we have to be humble and know our own limitations in that place.
Yeah.
Right? And it goes back to staying in our lane.
I'll say also to add the word of self-esteem on this. Like, trust yourself with the things you know. If not, you're amplified. Once you're in front of a class, your insecurities will come on.
Yeah.
Then it's like, this is what it is. If you're not still comfortable with this thing, maybe you don't take it. But make sure like you're good with it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe there's people feeling like the pressure because I'm a tap dancer, I should teach. And this like two things are like mixing in one body, and then just like don't feel the pressure of like I'm a tap dancer, I should teach. Don't do that.
No, there's nothing in the book of tap dancing that says that you have to be a teacher.
No.
Mm-mm.
Jimmy Slide said once, he said the time in his life that he wanted to teach, he was too busy touring. And so he could have, but he never developed a thing in the community where like he was the teacher. Henry Letang was a teacher, Stanley Brown was a teacher, Sammy Dyer was a teacher, Leon Collins was a teacher. Like we do have those models, and they're different than the folks who pursued performance as like their primary avenue. And I mean, we'll go back to this. This goes back to the business to a certain degree, and like how do you earn a complete living as a tap dancer in the current market? But as always, like you want to measure, or at least engage in the market from a place of, this is what I know, and this is what I can do, and this is what I am confident in. Because the market doesn't care, man. Like, and the community can sometimes be harder. Like they'll come up and they'll check you. And I've done that. I've gone to people who I've seen teach something that, like, no, it just wasn't correct. And I said, there's two ways to approach it. One, you go up to them and you say, don't ever do that again. Or you say, if you're going to do that, this is what you have to do to not cause confusion and to not come off as more of an authority than you actually are. right? Otherwise, the people who do have the experience and do have the knowledge will become like enemies to your journey, and you want them to be allies. Like you want to be respectful of the work that other people have done to get to the place that they are, so that the people coming behind you will also be respectful of the work that you're doing. Right? And it might take more time than anybody wants to actually admit or anybody wants to actually do, but it's time worth taking. Right? And it's okay if our community slows down a little bit.
I think maybe this is also a thing that we can bring up next time during the business talk, to keep going on this a bit the next time. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, because there's so many questions inside that topic, exactly what you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, and I think we're at a point in time where, you know, there are the possibilities for changes. There are the possibilities for shifts, right? That we don't know if theaters are going to come back the way that they ever were, and we don't know if dance studios can come back the way that they were. And like, there's so many things in terms of the industries that are changing that we can come back and say, okay, we're gonna change the way we function so that we can come back in a way that's less pressurized by the market and more pressurized by the way that this craft needs to grow. Right?
And maybe you guys can think about questions around this, but for instance, in other styles, the lines between being just a performer or being a choreographer or being a teacher, all these are a bit more, not strict, but clear in a way, maybe compared to tap dance, because like in ballet, most prima ballerinas doesn't teach, they're just performing. So maybe that's something we can bring up next time, talk a bit about, you know, the different aspect of tap dance in the same way as other dance styles has. Because at least in my opinion, you don't see that many that is just dancing. There are always teaching or always choreographing or extra things. So the different type of roles that exists.
Yeah, I think the navigation of the industry or the various industries that a tap dancer can exist in are that's a very good thing.
So the guys who are coming next time can think about this, and we'll touch into that next time. Let's see.
Cool. To what extent does your teaching influence your professional dancer choreographer work? I don't know.
You are teaching your choreography, so very obvious answer.
Well, I think it depends what you do most of. Like, what is your body engaged in more? Is it engaged in teaching the same warm-up and kind of like a series of combinations for students, or is it engaged in trying to figure out how to interpret a song for a theatrical audience or a jazz club presentation? Like, they're different practices essentially. I don't know about you guys. Like, I started choreographing for that first teaching gig. Like, that was my first time where I had to put pieces together. And so I think as a learning exercise for me, that was great. But I tend to believe that pieces like choreographic works are forms of education, because we're dealing with audiences that oftentimes have never seen a tap dancer live. Like, still to this day, there are tons of people in the world who have never seen a living tap dancer in person. Now, maybe more than before, they've seen videos, they've seen stuff on YouTube. But I remember, gosh, even in like 2008, 9, 10, 11, I would do performances and people are like, "You're the first guy I've ever seen tap dancing in real life." I'm like, whoa, okay, that's a responsibility. Like that's a thing. So
That comment comes every time in Norway. That's how few we are.
yeah, it's a real thing. So I think if your process in the craft work is that of a teacher, your dancing is going to be a certain way. If your process in the craft work is that of a performer, your dancing is going to show up a certain way. And if you want to do both, you might feel like your brain is flip-flopping a little bit. But one is always going to influence the other because it's a physical practice. You're putting your body through a thing.
Mm. The whole question doesn't show up, but I can read it. As a tap dancer in a not so tapping country, it develops but slowly. Do you think we should reach out to people from outside the community and encourage them to try, or rather wait till they decide to do it? There's this thing of weak awareness that tap is actually happening in Poland, but I wonder if there is something we could do to help it grow. I think maybe Poland is kind of like Norway when it comes to the tap community. It's very small here. But for instance, like, okay, the tap school has been there for 17 years, but it's the only place that is kind of recognized as, it's the only tap school. There's been a couple of the last 10 years, a couple of tap classes here or there, especially connected to like musical theater students and these kind of things. But like the school here is mostly grown-up people. We don't have many kids. We have grown-up people. And these are people who, for instance, are interested in football or in it's so many different people. So like when we put up classes every semester, we always put up 2 beginners classes, and they almost always get packed. And I target them through absolutely non-dancing things, because tap dance is like a neutral dance. Everybody can think that, oh, this is cool. Why didn't I think about trying this? Because everybody has some kind of perception of what hip hop is, of what ballet is. But when it comes to tap dance, the only thing they have is like, oh, this is something they used to do in the old movies. That's it, normally.
Right.
So you can really engage a large audience. I don't think you should be afraid to just put up, because I think you will be surprised that a lot of people would like to learn this.
Yeah.
It's anyday people who, instead of going to the gym, they feel like doing something else and they find tap dance. That's it.
Yeah, even in New York City in the 80s, Broadway Dance Center, before it was Broadway Dance Center, was Hines and Hatchett. It was Maurice Hines and Frank Hatchett. And it was JoJo's Dance Machine before that. But when it was Hines and Hatchett, and JoJo's Dance Machine was Jason Samuel Smith's dad and mom used to own the studio. But when it was Hines and Hatchett, they used to have to offer free tap dance classes in New York City in the 80s. And it was hard for people to show up. Right? So if you are in a community that there aren't a lot of people doing the thing, from a cultural standpoint, you start by opening the doors and saying, hey, come in, like there's this cool thing happening. And from that engagement, from that like light experience, you will start having people who, whatever track they go, they will now have a touch point for tap dancing. So if they see a show come up, they'll buy a ticket because they want to go see the tap dancing in the show. Or if they see another class, they're like, maybe I'll go to the class. Or if they see a jam session, they'll come to watch. They don't have to be the person that will become the next tap dancer or will become the next dancers in the scene, because the scene is not just the dancers, right? And I think this is, from a cultural standpoint, everybody can dance, but not everybody will become the representation of dancing in that community, right? So you want everybody on your block, in the town, in the county, to know how to shuffle, but so that everybody can recognize when the representation of dance, or where the person who can't, that's our dancer. Like these people over here, those are our dancers. We all know how to do this. Like we all know what it takes. But these are the cats when somebody says, "Who are your dancers?" We point to these people. I think what has happened in a lot of spaces is that we take the representative as the only, right? The people who we point to as, these are our dancers, well, those are the only people who can dance. You're like, no. Everybody can.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the folks that we roll out and say, like, check this out. So yeah, bring them in. Open the door, man.
And that's a good thing. It's never too late to learn tap dancing. I mean, I have students, beginners coming in that are over 70. It's amazing. And people are there for different reasons. They're there because they have seen it somewhere, or they're wondering what it is, or they just want to move and they're like, oh, I like the music.
Mm-hmm.
Or they want to socialize. So it's many reasons. And that's a great thing about tap dance, that you can do this. Like, it doesn't matter if you have one leg, or if you're old and just need to move, or if you want to become a dancer, or you can have whatever reason, but tap dance can be there for whatever kind of reason you have. I don't see so many other dance styles that has this opportunity, in a way.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I think if you're dealing with adults in that way, it becomes more important to integrate kind of the context of the craft. And so the introduction of people, the screening of video clips, the connection with the broader context, adults can take in much more than like little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you drop a name, you can trust that 10% of the people in the room will actually go and look up that name, right? And they'll come back to you the next time they see you, and they're like, have you ever seen this clip? Because I just saw that clip and I've never seen somebody. And you're like, I'm so glad that you finally saw the Nicholas brothers in Stormy Weather, because that's amazing, right? But to see their joy is to recognize that this stuff is not common, right? It can't be assumed that this is common cultural awareness, because it's not. And so wherever we are, we're charged with kind of that re-exposure continually. And it's important, because that's how the story continues. That's how the connection continues.
That's yeah, why not? But I think we talk about this, like, the more you expose the art form, the more people will engage. Then here in Barcelona, maybe these people going to a big street, dancing on street, and people will stop like, what's this? here you have is this thing, you can do this thing, blah 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 blah, blah. This kind of thing. Shows, yeah, you put a show on a theater. Like, I don't think that's the thing that I want to see. Just come.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the possibility to say, like, come here to see the thing, people will don't know. Then the more things you create to expose it, not for your joy, like, I want to enjoy that thing. Like, if you want to make it grow, you need to put it out. I think, yeah.
Sharing is caring.
And it's a cool thing, right? Tap dancing is cool. Like, it's not it's not the kind of thing that when somebody sees it, they're like, ugh, and they leave. In all my life, there's only been one person that I've ever met that hates tap dancing. That, like, actually dislikes it to the point where I would sit in with the band, and every time that I was invited to sit in, they would get up and they would leave. Like, literally hates the thing. But that's one person. In all, I've been dancing, gosh, 38, 37 years. So one person in 37 years of dancing is not bad. Like, that's a good percentage.
Yeah.
Right? So we have a thing that's, like, very, very attractive and very kind of inspiring. And so why not share that?
And all the different voices. Like, you don't like this way, maybe you like this way, and maybe you like this way, and maybe the other way. Like,
yeah.
True. I think that's all the questions.
Did we get to everything?
Yeah,
I think so.
it looks like it. So the next time we will talk a bit about the business side, right? We already planted some ideas.
Yeah, I think it's important.
And especially
the market is such a big part of what we do, and can be like, yeah.
And we can angle it a bit about, like, okay, how to come back from this pandemic, right? Because things have changed also.
Yeah.
If you suddenly is wondering about something, the questions, we leave the video, we upload on YouTube. You have a discussion group on YouTube. I don't think anybody used it yet.
No, we are ignored, but we're fine.
Stephanie.
We don't take it personally. It's
Sure.
fine.
But at least bring your questions next time. It will be good.
Yeah, we have, like, another topic. Like, a student came to me, like, don't worry, we will not run out of ideas.
Oh yeah, it always comes something new. So next time, business side. Thank you guys for joining us today. We are looking forward to seeing you next week. Same place, same time.
Yeah,
See you guys.
thanks everybody.